Hello everyone, welcome to episode 20 of the Roker Rapport, quite a milestone for us tonight. There's lots to discuss off the back of a hard-fought draw with Tottenham Hotspur. Obviously we've got January transfer window to go into. It was underwhelming for some, I think, to say the least. With me tonight we've got Callum. How's tricks, Callum?
Yeah, good. Not too bad.
Feeling good. And also we've got Tom. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Our injury list is about as bad as the club's, really, when it comes to the podcast at the moment.
yeah.
But we'll make do with what we've got. So let's start with the Spurs match. Tom, what were your thoughts on the game?
It was a nice surprise, actually. It's been a month full of absolute dross, so it's nice to see that we can actually put in these battling performances again. Kone and Dong coming back. I didn't realise how much we'd missed them until they started. Having Kone instead of Djilobodji alongside John O'Shea makes an absolute world of difference. They seem to have a much better partnership than Djilobodji and O'Shea, because I think Djilobodji just makes everyone in the team nervous, whereas if you have like a calmer head like Kone, who knows how to defend, knows what he's doing, then everyone else feels a bit more calmer. And they managed to hold off like Kane and Ericsson. They marshalled them well, and I thought we worked quite well as a that back three. I mean, Dinea, he was a bit ropey for the first 10 minutes, but they kind of settled into it, and it just worked as a bit of a dynamic. The fullbacks managed to nullify their rampaging fullbacks until we crocs one of them. And then in midfield, Ndong's energy is something that we've been missing for the whole of January. And it looks actually, for the first time in about 2 months, we actually had a midfield. We had Ndong, Rodwell and Larson in a three, which actually worked, as opposed to just the weird collection of a centre-back in midfield and Donald Love as his partner, or George Honeyman and Dinea, and it doesn't work. And I was quite pleasantly surprised that it wasn't like we were hanging on. It wasn't these where we got peppered all game. It was more of that we just restricted Tottenham to pot shots and half chances, and it was really quite positive. Just wish Barini had scored, or when he had that glorious opportunity. But you can't have everything in one game, can you?
I suppose I agree with you there. Specifically two players you mentioned for me, Kone and Dong. I mean, obviously it's been difficult with Kone and his performances with his bad back and all that. Obviously with the transfer window closing now, safe to say he's with us. So is he back to what we originally saw? Is that it? Is he settled now? He's got no choice really, has he? So he's got to perform. And I think that's interesting to see that, because for a while we lost confidence in him. He started having some really bad games, and there was some obviously conjecture as to whether it was the fact that he wanted to leave and he was unhappy, or whether he was just Moyes couldn't get it out of him. Do you know what I mean? Whether it was a problem with the system. But I think that certainly highlighted that he's certainly able to compete at that level.
He looks like a player now. That's sorry, Callum. He said he looks like a player now that's kind of he knows that he's here now for the rest of the season, so he might as well be good. So and then we can if he wants his move at the end of the season, wherever we are in the football hierarchy, then he can bugger off or whatever. But it showed so much, because I thought he might come back last night and be having a bit of a sulk, thinking he wants out, but no, he was very good.
Yeah, I mean, I've said in previous podcasts when we talked about his form that he's still. I mean, we know he's got everything that you need to be a very, very good Premier League centre back, and that if he got his move to Everton, he would be a very, very good player for them. If you just look at the stats that he had last season, before he came in, 45 goals conceded in 22 games. When he came in, and we conceded 17 goals in the remaining 16 games. Now that's a massive shift and a huge impact, and you can tell when you're watching him play, that his positioning and his reading of the game and his tackling, he doesn't have to dive in, he doesn't have to throw himself at stuff, because he gets himself in the right place. And that's the difference between Djilobodji, who is no less sort of athletic. He's obviously not as strong as Kone, but in terms of pace, I don't think he's much slower, and in terms of athleticism, he should be able to match Kone. But it's the positioning and the kind of the authority that Kone has that it's just a joy to watch him defend when he's at his best. I mean, I said he was Player of the Year last season because I thought his impact was that great, and it meant that Defoe's goals meant something. And so, there's been a lot of talk about his form, about his attitude, and Moyes has obviously thought the problems with his attitude, the problems with whether he's going to play or agitate or cause a bit of trouble is obviously worth the risk, because you've got such an important player there, and we saw how important he was last night. I thought he was fantastic. Just edged Ndong for man of the match for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with those points, and it's, in a sense, I know we're grasping at straws here, but it's almost like having another signing, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Because in my eyes, he wasn't there. He hasn't been there for quite some time now, a couple of months. So it's good to have that. I mean, obviously he was gone away at the AFCON, so technically, physically, he wasn't there for a while anyway. But didn't get much game time at the AFCON, actually. I wonder what that was about.
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, and we know he was carrying a bit of an injury. He went off against Burnley, and the sort of the cynics came out and said maybe he's faking it, maybe he just wants to get away, save himself for the AFCON, maybe save himself for a transfer and all that sort of stuff. Football makes you cynical. Modern day football makes you think the worst of players, particularly when Kone did what he did in the summer. But obviously, he's maybe a little bit out of favour. Maybe the manager's seen he's a little bit out of form, carrying an injury. But it certainly didn't look to be carrying an injury last night. But it's good for us, because the pitches were pretty terrible over there, from what I've heard. I didn't watch any of the African Cup nations, but
I did. It was quite hilarious, actually.
I saw some of the videos, the inevitable Twitter clips of some of the quality football going on. But I didn't watch any of it. But apparently the pitches were quite poor, so I'm not gonna feel sorry for the Ivory Coast that he didn't get to play some, because obviously it's better for us.
Yeah,
so
that's true enough. Talking
I'm
about
glad he's back.
Players, as I said, Ndong. I mean, for such a young lad, and for a lad who looked completely out of his depth in the first couple of games for us, again, he was like a revelation to watch last night. And it's interesting because he has a composure that seems beyond his years, and he's sort of filling that role of that ball-winning role as well, which was like he's quite strong, which I didn't expect from him, sort of thing. And he's good at the interception. I mean, imagine him and Kirchhoff, if Kirchhoff was firing like together in the same midfield. That'd be wonderful. But yeah, I certainly think he's a player that's come into his own. Yeah, I think we're absolutely missing, like Tom said earlier, we're missing that in midfield, or we have been. We've had this hodgepodge ragtag midfield that hasn't really been performing anywhere near the standard that they have to be in order to provide that support to Defoe and things like that.
I thought the formation helped as well yesterday against Spurs. I mean, we seemed to be able to press them quite high up the pitch, which was a bit of a difference. I mean, when you consider the game at White Hart Lane in September, the way that we played. I mean, obviously we didn't enjoy a lot of possession last night, which we wouldn't expect to, but the game plan was very different in terms of we pressed them quite high up the pitch. We put pressure on their defence, and I was quite surprised at how their defence seemed to panic quite often and lose the ball. I mean, Danny Rose going off was a huge blow for them. I mean, Ben Davies is a decent player, but he's not got the pace or the kind of the drive that Danny Rose has in putting you under pressure and getting forward. But yeah, I think the formation was good. I mean, Barini dropped. He was able to get quite close around Defoe and maybe cause a bit of trouble in the middle. But also when we lost the ball, we didn't have the ball, he dropped deeper, made sort of a midfield four that kind of stretched out and offered a bit of cover for the wing backs as well. And then obviously we had the three centre backs that really compacted the space. That meant that Spurs couldn't really play through us. So we're trying all night. and gaping holes out wide, really. I mean, especially in the second half when, the ball was going out to Walker 5 or 6 times and he had loads of space, loads of time. And every time they just kind of cut inside, tried to play it through, tried to do a few little through balls and a few snapshots and stuff like that. And Spurs looked quite devoid of ideas. They looked a bit rusty. And I was surprised they didn't exploit the fact that with wing backs we maybe didn't have that immediate cover in wider areas. I'm surprised they didn't exploit that more. But all credit's got to go to the players, because there was a real. I mean, when you contrast that with the performance against Stoke a couple of weeks ago, I mean, it's just night and day. It was very positive.
Yeah, again, I was quite disappointed with Tottenham. Not disappointed the way we nullified them quite well, but I was expecting a bit more. I don't know, a bit more guile, a bit more creativity, a bit more ideas. Like you said, they just didn't seem to have any kind of a spark. There was no one like with these incisive balls that would normally. It's an ideal opportunity, because if you put one ball through our defence, it usually opens up like the Red Sea, and you're in. But there was none of that. It was all a bit mundane, bit like slow paced build up. Whereas I don't know if that Danny Rose's injury quite early on affected them or affected the rhythm. But they just didn't seem to have much of a clue, and like the fact that again we restricted them to like pot shots and smothered attempts was testimony to us. But I also think we should get on to what kind of turned it in our favour. Not the play of the game, but just made everyone feel more up for it. Was Jack Rodwell absolutely clattering Dembele? See, and that could have gone two ways. See, he didn't get sent off. If he had got sent off, that would have been one of the most stupid things I would have ever seen, and it would have killed us and the game would have been over. But he didn't get sent off. And the crowd is now, all I've seen on like the past day or so on Twitter, that he's somehow now got curried favour with the fans by just clattering someone. And to have a player whose confidence must have been on the floor for so long, and all he needs to do is that. If that actually wins the fans round, and he puts in more performances like he did last night, we could have a new player on our hands, and that, weirdly, that's like quite exciting. Obviously, come back to me on Sunday when he's been terrible and everyone hates him again. But I don't know, it's just it feels like this could be a bit of a watershed moment for a player that's been quite rubbish.
Well, he does seem to come on in leaps and bounds, I think, in recent times under Moyes' stewardship. What do you reckon, Callum?
I don't know. I mean, I think obviously Undong being back made a huge difference, and maybe, who knows, made him look a little bit better, because Undong was kind of everywhere, and like you said, Rodwell's only, in my mind, I mean, I was there, but Rodwell was working hard and everything, and didn't do anything shockingly bad or whatever, but the only notable thing he really did was just absolutely clatter Dembele.
But it was awesome.
And it was, I mean, we love that sort of stuff where, we do sometimes just want to see an absolute nutter running about on the pitch, and, just properly getting stuck in, whether fairly or not. I mean, it's one of those things where I think if it happens to us, if a player does that to us, especially to one of our better players, because I think Dembele's kind of what makes Tottenham tick, and he does the quiet stuff very well. But he never loses the ball, and he's strong, quick. He sort of great vision and everything keeps him ticking over. I think Tottenham are well within their rights, sort of not like the tackle, and to be very aggrieved because it was high and it was late, and there was no attempt to get the ball, and it was not pretty. It was not nice. It's one of those grey areas, because if you do something like that late and high, but you're going in with your studs, it's a red. It's a red all day. It doesn't even have to be that high. Rodwell's was up around the thigh. I mean, he properly kicked him. And if you do that, if you do that with your studs down on someone's ankle, you're off. But because it was a kick in motion with the top of the foot, it's only a yellow. So I can understand people's anger that maybe the rules seem a bit weird, a bit inconsistent. Because even if you get the ball with with your studs up challenge, a referee can send you off.
Yeah.
So I can understand. I can understand why they're angry about it, but it did give the crowd a lift because we are all just searching for anything, just for them to show us that they care.
Well,
and obviously,
I agree with that in the sense that, I mean, Tom highlighted it well, didn't he? When it's one of two things happens. Do you know what I mean? And I think he was lucky. We all know he was lucky to get away with that. But what troubles me about that challenge is the look on his face. He's not looking at the ball. He doesn't even look like he knows the ref's behind him, which just shows a sort of tunnel vision that he's obviously got in his head when he's going in for this tackle that he knows isn't actually going to be a tackle for the ball. And we've seen him before get sent off for challenges like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was sort of like that lack of discipline.
Well, it was one of them people.
Yeah.
People have kind of put it in the sphere of tackles where, you know, the opposition are breaking, there's men covering, but you're looking at maybe a 2-on-2 or a 3-on-2. Tottenham break at pace, and so you think, right, well, I'll just clean him out, I'll take the yellow card, and that's that. Like you said, there was a kind of a sinister element to it that makes you think, well, because it's so blatant and it's so high, so reckless, so late, and it's got, I mean, if he catches him like square on the knee, I mean, that could cause serious damage to a player. And so, like I said, I think if that happened to us, we'd have a very, very different view on whether the referee should have sent him off or not. But rightly or wrongly, it did definitely, you know, give us a little bit of a kind of, all right, well, you're up for this. You're willing to, you know, get stuck in, and I personally don't condone those kind of tackles, and I think that Rodwell was wrong to do it. Honestly would rather that we kind of had that football in general had that attitude of, well, I wouldn't want that done to us, so we're not going to do it ourselves. That may sound like, you know, utopian and naive of me, but that's the way I kind of look at it. So. Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult situation. I definitely sympathise with people who think he should have gone.
Yeah. Do you not remember Tottenham's game against Chelsea last year when they just decided they were going to go kick everyone up in the air and then start gouging eyes and stuff like that? I mean, it comes and goes, doesn't it?
My mother always said, 2 wrongs don't make a right, do they? You know, it's always said, yeah. So
you must be the only person I know who listens to their mother. But fair enough, man. On that note, talking about injuries, we've got a Twitter question, as usual. We've got from a gentleman called Hoggett. In light of Rodwell's incredible challenge, highlight that, what's the best challenge/snap you've ever seen by a Sunderland player? I'm going to direct that to Tom.
Well, there's a big long list involving Lee Barry Cattermole that we could start. And obviously there's the one where he flattened Colback. And also there was another great one where he took out El Mohammadi at Hull. But he walked off like, oh, what have I done? But my personal favourite... Oh, sorry, I've got two. I think they were in consecutive derbies, if I'm right. Both involving Lee Cattermole, but not, only one of them doing it. My first one is when we were under O'Neill, went to St James's, and clearly... Cattermole and Barsley have been hyping each other up before they've gone out, and as soon as they've come out, Barsley has gone absolutely flying into, I think, Gutierrez, and he's sprawled him up into the stand, and he gets booked after about 30 seconds, and then he turns around at Cattermole and winks, and it set the tone. And then Cattermole did the same at St James's under Poyet. When he took out, he like decapitated Daryl Janmat, and turned around shrugging his shoulders thinking, what's that about? And again, set the tone of the games that we didn't lose. But then obviously you have Kevin Ball flattening every person under the sun. Yeah, it's a weird concept of Sunderland, because we don't get excited for goals anymore because we never score them. but the biggest cheer you'll ever hear is someone getting absolutely crunched on the halfway line.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it was quite nice, quite a nice Jack Rodwell's challenge.
Yeah, it was definitely good. It certainly galvanised us. What about you, Callum? Yours?
Like I said, I mean, I'm not a big fan of like proper, unfair crunching, clattering tackles. I mean, Catamol on Colback is just objectively funny. It is. I mean, it's just, yeah, it is. I mean, it just has to be. But at the same time, not necessarily a tackle, but just for a pure maniac running around the pitch. Lorik Sana was just. Yeah. I mean, he was just brilliant. I remember, the obligatory YouTube videos that you watch when someone signs. Yeah, you have to kind of, I don't know this player, I'll check YouTube. YouTube will tell me what I need to know. And the entire, all that it was, I think there was 2 goals, and the rest of it was just 10 minutes of him snapping people to heavy metal music. That's all it was. And I was like, oh, right, okay, fair enough. And he went into everything, every tackle, 2-footed, literally every single one. If you watch, a highlight of his time at Sunderland, he's just constantly both feet into tackles, leaving the ground, and he didn't get sent off that often. For us, I think he maybe got once or twice at most. But he was just an absolute nutter. He was him and Catamol in central midfield. It was just it's just a recipe for disaster. But I really liked him. He was just funny to watch. I enjoyed that.
When men were men, good times.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, obviously now we've got to talk about that thing called the transfer window. It's fair to say that, as I said at the start, many fans are underwhelmed. We were expecting a striker. We didn't get one. However you feel about that, and whatever you believe the reasons are, you can't say that you're happy about it. That inevitably means that we'll probably take whatever dross is available on the free market. I mean, that isn't to say that you couldn't necessarily find someone who will do a job, but when you consider that we sold one of our only goal scorers in order to fund the transfer window, essentially, we didn't bring in another goal scorer, it's quite terrifying, especially when you look at the fact that one was injured, obviously, and didn't score that many goals anyway. We've only got Defoe and Barini until Anichebe's fit again, and Barini's not firing either. So, Callum, what do you make of the transfer window?
I'm obviously not happy about it. I think, like you said, Van Aanholt was a source of a lot of goals, a lot of attacking intent. Not a good defender at all. And anyone sort of pointing that out, you don't have to do too much research to kind of find examples. And he infuriated me more than most, in terms of the one thing you want to see a defender do is just kind of stand up to the ball, look it square in the eye, and just take it. If it hits you, it hits you, kind of thing. And Van Aanholt never really got close to people, never really wanted to get hit by the ball, ducking out of the way. So I agree that £14 million is a lot for a defender that can't really defend. But you have to, in my opinion, if you're going to get that money, you have to go out and replace the attacking side of things. He's brought in Oviedo and Gibson. Oviedo, he hasn't really played very much football. He had a nasty leg break a few years ago and isn't renowned for goal scoring by any means. But he could be a fair left back. Of course, I'll give him a chance to show what he can do. As for Gibson, there's nothing to suggest that Moyes will be able to keep him fit. If he does, great. I hear good things. He's obviously got something about him. He might be able to add the goals, but it's a big gamble to ask him to add the goals, because is he going to be fit? I mean, it's so, in a sense you could say we have added goals, but what we've really added are players that Moyes trusts, that he likes. He knows they're not going to cause him too much trouble. I think it's clear with what Moyes said after the game yesterday about team spirit, fostering team spirit. That was maybe a sly dig at Van Aanholt, saying, now we're starting to get people in who I can build a team spirit around. And team spirit is, of course, incredibly important. But you have to have the goals, you have to have the quality. And like I said with Kone, he's balanced off the personality issues and maybe the disagreements they've had against the fact that we need him, we need Kone. And with Van Aanholt, he's maybe calculated, do we really need this guy? I'm going to take a risk and say, no, he's not worth the hassle that he causes me. So he's obviously made that decision. What I would say is that obviously with being allowed to, he's put his foot down and said he's keeping Kone, and he's been supported in doing that. He's brought in Oviedo. He said he was the one who gave the green light for the Van Aanholt sale. He's brought in Gibson. He's brought in all these players who he is almost every single one. He said, they know me, I know them, and he's definitely building a squad that is his. Whatever limitations have been placed on him, he has ultimately consented to them. So, he is building a team that is his team, and it therefore reflects on him. So, we'll see how well it goes. We'll see what happens with it. But I don't think it's right for people to say, oh, we haven't got any money, we haven't got this, we haven't got that. He's working under these limitations, and he's also limited himself by saying he wants Premier League experience, he wants players. He clearly, it's a two-way street. He wants players he knows. So he's limiting himself in some ways as well, because there's obviously a premium on Premier League players, and we don't have money. So he's obviously limiting himself to a certain batch of players, and within that batch of players, we're going to have to look at the bottom end of them. So while there's limitations on him, there's obviously he's put limitations on himself as well. So, I think this is definitely his squad. He's building it to his specifications, and we'll see what it brings. But I'm definitely not thrilled or optimistic about it
in any way, what shape or form.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got some questions again from Twitter. A gentleman called Scott Lang. Should we have done better to get more players in during the transfer window, or are you happy with the current squad? And I will field that one if that's okay. Because, for me, absolutely, we should have had a system in place, a plan in place that would cover all eventualities. The fact that we're sitting here now, hearing these vague excuses from our manager, is just, again, it's another example of the poor state of planning that's going on at club level. That's what really troubles me, is not so much the fact that what we've got isn't enough, because it'll have to be. We haven't got a choice now, really. We're fans and we just have to sit here and take it. But in reality, what really concerns me is that there was no plan. I mean, we've seen this whole... we managed to make a saga, almost like a deadline day saga, about Ajoa coming in from Leicester, to the point where he's kicking off, saying he's never going to play for them again. He feels betrayed by Ranieri. I don't know if that was all to do with us, or whether, because he never mentioned the club specifically, but he did say if a bid came in, it was promised to him that if a bid came in of 5-6 million, they'd accept and he'd be willing to go. What troubles me is that you've got a decent striker, but he's 30 years old, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, we've got both of our better strikers are actually older than him, so you can't really say anything about him there. But it's not the sort of it's evident to me there's no real scouting going on that Moyes trusts, and again that is a concern. I mean, you could also sort of compare that to the fact that we've now got 10 players from Everton and Manchester United, 10 players that Moyes specifically knows and has worked with, even no matter how briefly it was for some of the younger lads like McNair and Love. But yeah, that concerns me. So why there wasn't a plan? Why there wasn't something to cover the inevitable Sunderland thing of going in for this one player and then realising you can't get him at the last minute? That's what troubles me.
Yeah, I mean, even Djilabodji we kind of knew him because Moyes' new chief scout who he worked with at Everton had been at Chelsea and had signed Djilabodji for Chelsea. So he's obviously... There's not a lot of kind of detailed scouting going on. Even Ajoa, he's like I said, he's obviously looking at Premier League players. He's saying, oh well, the only players I think he said in the quote, the only players who'll come here are players who know how I work and they're willing to work with me, and I kind of have that rapport with them. And so you're like, well, okay, but at the same time, I'm sure it works both ways in terms of you actually wanting to work with players you've worked with before. And that's reassuring to him as well, because he said it for sort of every player. You know, I know what they're like. I think he said for Oviedo, he's a good boy. You know, he's a good character and all that sort of stuff. And I think we know that there's better value elsewhere, and he's had sufficient time. And while we can say, oh well, you know, they wouldn't sell Ulloa to us, and it was going to cost too much money. Fine, but we now know that there's money that could have been spent, and we're not. I don't think it looks like we're looking in European leagues or in other leagues where there's clearly talent, because last year we got 3 talented players. Kone for £5 million, no Premier League experience, not British. Within 6 months, he's worth £15 to £20 million more. We signed Danny Graham for £5 million in January 2012, and he had Premier League experience, British. So it sounds good coming from someone when you say, oh well, we need Premier League experience, and I think it's a bit of a myth, to be honest, this Premier League experience. Yeah. Stuff, and it's a bit of kind of it strikes me as him playing it safe, not having a lot of imagination, not having a lot of confidence in his own ability, and kind of being stuck in a system that there's no proof that it's even necessary or works to have players who are Premier League proven or who are British. For me, it just doesn't wash. Like you said, if Ulloa's not going to sign by, what was it? I think it was, 5 o'clock when we put the bid in? So there's still 6 hours left. Are you telling me we haven't got any other strikers that we've scouted? That there aren't any strikers who could be sold to us at all? No one's selling. No one in continental Europe is selling for that much money. I have to say, I don't believe it. I don't think the scouting network has been up to scratch, and I think that has to, whatever you think of Moyes, whatever you say, we have to admit that not signing a striker is a massive, massive problem.
Do you think
no getting away from it.
Do you think that that supposed bid for James Rodriguez was just that?
James Rodriguez or Jay Rodriguez, because James Rodriguez.
They're both called the same thing, man.
£60 million bid to Real Madrid for James Rodriguez. Why not?
Well, I don't know. He doesn't go to continental Europe, as you.
No, he doesn't. He's never managed him. I don't think Rodriguez has ever played for Everton. So,
well, as you said, I was thinking during the day today. Even when he was at Man United, he went down the same route because he couldn't get his scouting there was next to nothing. It was just like pick the biggest players' names out of a hat, don't get them, then you end up with having to buy someone from Everton. And he wanted Leighton Baines as well. He got Fellaini, and I remember he wanted Leighton Baines
and Coleman.
Bloody hell, man! This is the thing. He doesn't. I don't know if it's the fact that he got burnt quite a lot when he was at Everton with really, really bad buys, and spent a lot of money on players like the first one that springs to mind is that billionaire Dunov, that Russian lad, and he paid an absolute fortune for him, and he was garbage. And he got done on players like Van der Meijden, that Royston Drenthe, and places where they pick these players up from continental Europe, and they've just not been good enough. Whereas now I think you're right. He just doesn't believe. He doesn't believe in himself. He doesn't think that I can drag this team out by gambling. He can't. It's unlike Allardyce, where he's got the confidence to go into these other markets that he's known for years, and he's had, like every manager, they have varied success. For every joke I have, there's like, oh god, we've got a terrible Bolton player. Vaz Tay, for instance. And it's like, yeah, you're going to get your hit and misses, but then eventually you're going to buy 3 players. I mean, let's be honest, Allardyce was absolutely incredibly lucky that, first of all, Kershaw stayed fit for as long as he did, and Kone and both Kasri just slotted into this team so seamlessly.
But you see, is it luck or is it good management? Is it awareness of sports science, and kind of a real knowledge and confidence in yourself? That's the thing. Like with David Moyes, we choose to sort of say, oh well, no, he's really good. He's just had a lot of bad luck. But then with Sam Allardyce, we say, well, he wasn't that good. He was just lucky. It's one of those things where I'm just like, can we not at least acknowledge that Sam Allardyce managed to it wasn't just Kirchhoff, it was Kabul, O'Shea. We barely had any injuries. He got Barini fit and kept him fit and got him sharp as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of and Carmel was fit all the way through too. It's one of these things where look, I suppose there might be such a thing as everything, all the bad things seem to happen at once, and he maybe has no control over it. But at the same time, we can't just say that Allardyce has all these sports science things going on and it's just pure luck that it worked. I don't know. I just think that David Moyes gets an easy rise, and people don't really. I saw something when we signed Oviedo and Gibson. Someone saying, "Oh well, you can't really blame him if these signings don't work out because he hasn't had any money," and you're thinking, well, if you're already making excuses for signings, or like an hour or two after they've signed. People just don't want to hold him to any standard at all, and he's got to be held to standards. You've got to criticise him and assess his decisions, and whatever the limitations that have been placed on him, however severe they are, he is Sunderland's manager. He is getting paid. He is doing the job, and so he is consenting to those limitations, whether tacitly or not, and so. I think that to sort of say, oh, we'll keep doing the job, keep getting paid, but we're not going to blame you for anything. We're not going to criticise you for anything. We're not going to, hold you to account at all. I don't think is right, and I don't think it means that he'll be giving everything he's got because he'll get away scot-free. So
I agree with that. I think a massive sign of that as well, something that definitely signifies that from the fans, is the constant backtracking to the argument of, oh well, I'm sick of chopping and changing managers. This is the only way. This is the only way that we can finally come good and get some stability. And I mean, when you see fans in such numbers at this stage of the season as well, like just after the January transfer window, already resigned to relegation. It's quite a gut punch, isn't it? Really, and it's indicative of the way the club is run. I mean, particularly when talking about Moyes with his ridiculous dour outlook on everything and his need to dampen already dampened hopes. It's like there's no one else to do that for. It's not like you get constant rallying calls from John O'Shea, who will just stand in front of a camera for 5 minutes and say, well look, before he says everything. It's just pointless. He makes excuses as well, but that's what he does, and that's what they're like. I think that's the worst thing for me about Moyes, is these people rallying around him saying, oh well, he's telling the truth, and like, honesty isn't as important in this game. It isn't as important as you think. Because don't for 1 second think that he's being honest about how much money he's got to spend, what he was actually told when he came into the job, what he's actually doing, who he's pursuing. Do you know what I mean? There's this whole concept that, oh, we love a bit of honesty from the club. It's nothing. It's breadcrumbs. It's breadcrumbs to lead you away from these massive problems that arguably would have everyone terrified of what's happening at their club. So yeah, I agree with that. I can't stand Moyes. I mean,
well, he said after the game, we're going to have a good team spirit. We're going to have to do this, but it's something like because we haven't got the players that we want here, and you're just like,
that's another brilliant thing to hear from your boss, isn't it?
Yeah, come on, mate. Say what you want in private. Like, if you want to talk to your coaches or the chief exec or the chairman like that behind closed doors, then fair enough. But when that's out there, like, how are the players not going to hear that? Why are the players going to want to play for someone like that to the best of their ability. It's very easy to get up for a game against Tottenham or Liverpool. All the ex-pros will say, "Oh, you don't need any motivation for games like that." For the big games, the games against the big players, the big teams. It's when you're scrapping it out against Burnley, or Swansea or whoever. That's where we've come up short, and we know that the players are capable of performances like the ones against Liverpool, like the ones against Tottenham, and that just emphasises the fact that in the other games, there's something wrong. There's something going on that means the players aren't at it, aren't motivated, and not delivering the level that we know that they can deliver. And that's what frustrates people. And when you see quotes like that, it's hard not to think, well, is this kind of maybe playing a bit of a part in it? Do you look at Allardyce? I mean, I know we keep harking back and he's gone and we should get over it. We're like kind of ex-boyfriends, just kind of, constantly talking about our ex. Yeah. But the game where like Jeffrey Schlupp goes down with cramp at the opposite end of the pitch, so he's nowhere near play, and he's even off the pitch for Crystal Palace, and Everton go up the other end and score, and to get the game stopped, Schlupp shuffles himself onto the pitch to try and get them to stop it, even though he's at the other end of the pitch. Nothing's going to happen, and he's only got cramp. It's not a head injury. So by every single law of the game, you don't stop the game. There's no need to stop the game. If anything, you can card Schlupp for getting himself back on the pitch to try and get the game stopped. Allardyce comes out, and he knows the game, but he defends the player, and he defends his team, and he puts his attention on someone else, and he looks like an idiot, because all the match of the day pundits are saying, "Oh, well, Big Sam's got it wrong there, I don't see what he's talking about," and all that sort of stuff. But he's come out and he's defended his players, and then he said, if they believe as much as I believe that we're going to get out of it, we'll get out of it.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of his biggest features, I think. I mean,
and
that is the key difference, isn't it, between him and Moyes? Is that sort of being
well,
able to even pretend to be positive. But you say that, I mean, we're running out of time, unfortunately, man. I'll have to cut you off, sadly. But that's a very
that's fine.
But we've got, talking about Allardyce, obviously we've got Palace coming up next. Just a quick one, really, because we've only got a few minutes left. What we thinking about Palace? Obviously, we're going to see Van Aanholt come against us for the first time. Obviously, going up against Allardyce again, so the first time since he left. So, Tom, what do you make of it? What do you reckon is going to happen?
Well, before last night, I thought we would just get rolled over like we did at West Brom. But now that they've got Van Aanholt in defence, that I think we could actually exploit that. If Moyes has got any nous about him, he'll pile everything down the right, and Billy Jones and Barini can actually work well together. And if they can stop Van Aanholt getting forward and exploit him in his defensive roles, because he'll switch off and he'll be far too up for this game, I imagine. And if we can exploit that and get in behind him, I think we could be all right. I mean, I spoke to some Crystal Palace fans on their podcast before, and they were already saying they can see what we were on about, that he is good going forward, but he's not very good as a defender. So since we know that, and all the players know that, they should try and exploit that as much as possible. On the flip side, you've got Allardyce, who knows us too well, and he knows how to play against us. And I'm hoping we just have the same solidity that we had last night. Tuesday. And Palace are going to give us more chances than Tottenham did. So hopefully we'll be able to just take our chances, stay solid at the back, and you never know. Like the other week I would have said we would get beat 3-4-0. I'm going to go with a tentative 1-1 draw.
Well, I agree about being able to manipulate the fact that Van Aanholt's now in defence. So hopefully, and the fact that he'll be overly eager. I think he'll throw a strop. I think there's going to be no love lost on the pitch tomorrow. To be honest, Saturday. Sorry. What about you, Ken?
I mean, I think they're obviously they've not been in the best of form. They've been boosted by that win against Bournemouth. They're a different kind of team to Tottenham. They have a lot of pace out wide. They like to get they have wingers. They play with traditional wingers. You know, they've got Schlupp, they've got Zaha, Townsend. So there's a lot of pace out wide. So the 3-5-2 could be overloaded, and you could have like 3 men on Benteke doing not much in the centre in the penalty area. So while it worked well against Tottenham, I'm not sure whether it's the best formation to play against Palace. But we did. Having said that, I think we did play it when Allardyce. Oh, was it? I think it was last season when we went there, and we did play 3-5-2, and I think we won that game. So, you know, who knows? But at the same time, Palace have a lot of threats. Benteke always scores against us. Allardyce has had a bit of time there to put his stamp on things. They've got the first clean sheet, I think, of his tenure, or definitely one of the. They haven't had many. So, you know, I think if we can get out of that without losing it, I think obviously it keeps us in the mix. If we lose it, then I think that's, you know, you never say never. Anything can happen. You can put a run of games together and you can be back in it. But at the same time, I think with the way things have been and with Palace, you know, obviously on a bit of a looking like they want to go on a bit of a run, having won against Bournemouth, I think a draw would probably be a good result in the circumstances. But we've just got to keep an eye on the wide players, and obviously on Benteke, who can just cause us all kinds of problems. But yeah,
just so I don't leave everybody feeling depressed after this, off the back of a decent performance yesterday, I will say that we're going to win 3-1. Sorry, I don't know where the goals are coming from, but that's what's going to happen. Because I said, you know what, to make sure it happens, I'll go and put a bet on it. And no, wait, that's how it works, isn't it?
Put it the other way around. 3-1 Palace.
It's a good job I discussed this before I made the bet, otherwise we'd be really in the shit. Right, cheers for joining me again, lads.
Cheers.
Thank you guys for listening. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been emotional. Hopefully it can be more emotional. Hopefully we can get a victory on Saturday. Hopefully we'll have more points and something interesting to talk about. We'll be returning to the regular Sunday nights as of next week. Don't forget you can subscribe to us on iTunes or on the Acast app. And this is the Roker Rapport signing off.